welcome to the 18th Annual Getzen Lecture on Government Accountability, hosted by the Department of Public Administration and Policy in the School of Public and International Affairs. My name is Ed Kello. I am the chair of the Department of Public Administration and Policy. This year's Getzen Lecture was selected as part of the Provost's signature lecture series, highlighting the importance of the topic today, and we appreciate the Provost's support. Before introducing our speaker, I'd like to recognize a few people who have joined us today. First, thank you to the SPIA student ambassadors who welcomed you into the lecture hall, and to all of our students who are in attendance. There are also many members of the SPIA faculty and staff here, so thank you. Thank you for joining us. Finally, I want to recognize the individuals who make this event possible year after year. Catherine Getzen Willoughby, an alumna of our PhD program in Public Administration and Policy, and a member of our faculty in the department, and Dan Paul Willoughby, a graduate of the Georgia School of Law. This lecture honors Catherine's parents, Evangeline and Forrest, who were lifelong advocates for public service and education. This is the first Getzen lecture since both of Catherine's parents have passed away. We are proud to continue their legacy through this annual lecture series. Please join me in honoring Catherine's parents and thanking the Willoughbys for their generosity. Now, please allow me to introduce this year's Getzen lecturer. General Paul M. Nakasone assumed his duties as Commander of U.S. Cyber Command and Director of the National Security Agency and Chief of the Central Security Service in May of 2018, and served in these positions until February of 2024. He served over 3 decades in the military with assignments in the United States, the Republic of Korea, Iraq, and Afghanistan. A native of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, General Nakasone is a graduate of St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, where he received his commission through the Reserve Officers Training Corps. He holds graduate degrees from the U.S. Army War College, the National Defense Intelligence College, and the University of Southern California. General Nakasone now serves as the founding director of the Institute of National Security at Vanderbilt University. Please help me welcome to the podium General Paul Nakasone.
Well, thanks, Doctor, and good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for the warm Georgia welcome today. Let me also thank the University of Georgia for inviting me to present this year. So I am truly honored to join the Getzen Lecture on Government Accountability this year. Having known so many of the past lecturers, to include my very good friend Chris Ray, I was truly honored when the University of Georgia reached out to me. I do want to especially thank Catherine and Dan Willoughby, who established this lecture in 2006 to honor Catherine's mother and father, Evangeline and Forrest Getzen, lifelong advocates of public service. What a wonderful way to honor your parents, Catherine. I think today, now more than ever, how important this is. Thank you so much. So it's a privilege to be here in the heart of Bulldog Nation with my red tie and speak with all of you as part of a series that has spurred important public discussions on accountability. Today I want to speak not only as the former director of the National Security Agency, but as a lifelong public servant, fellow citizen, and someone who believes deeply in the values that define America: freedom, rule of law, privacy, and security. These principles are not mutually exclusive. They're mutually reinforcing. Yet navigating that relationship requires vigilance, transparency, and integrity. We're here today to explore a question that goes to the core of American governance. What is the balance between maintaining national security and protecting U.S. civil liberties and privacy? How is this achieved? And perhaps how dynamic this balance can be, particularly over time. And just as important, I'll discuss how the National Security Agency is held accountable through rigorous oversight and why that oversight is essential for public trust. I'll also touch on how the world and NSA has changed from 2013 to today, the impact of the Snowden disclosures, the subsequent reforms that followed, and how NSA has adapted its practices to account for greater transparency and improved security. I want to focus on how, amid all the changes that are happening right now in our government, including the unexpected change in the top leadership of NSA, that the agency needs to maintain the trust and confidence of the American people through their work and ensuring what they do and how they do it is better understood by our citizens. So my goal is to keep this talk conversational and accessible. I know that not everyone here is a national security or cyber expert. In fact, when I was in college, when someone talked about Python, I assumed it was a snake and not a high-level, general-purpose coding language. But these issues affect us all. So whether you're studying computer science or political science, or just come for a chance to learn, I hope you'll gain insight into how our nation's securities agencies operate on your behalf, and how we ensure they do that lawfully, ethically, and transparently. A bit of a spoiler alert. I am hopeful that my words this afternoon resonate with many of the students here. The University of Georgia is a world-class university with a history of great education, research, and service. Yes, there is much change going on in our government today, but what will not change is that we need exceptionally bright, motivated, and dedicated public servants. Much in the same way, Evangeline Getzen made a difference with her public service. My hope is that many of you will also consider positions at the local, state, or federal levels. The success of our democracy is reliant on service. Whether for a few years or many, it all makes a difference. Let me start with why this balance between security and privacy matters so profoundly, historically, legally, operationally, and ethically. So the NSA operates in a global environment that is rapidly changing, technologically complex, and persistently adversarial. Nation states, terrorist organizations, and cyber criminal syndicates are using tools of unprecedented sophistication. Their aim? To undermine American institutions, steal our intellectual property, influence our democratic processes, and if possible, erode the foundations of our national security. We face adversaries who operate across time zones, encrypted apps, artificial intelligence, and distributed command networks. The weapons? They include malware, ransomware, misinformation, and social engineering. This is a world where the lines are blurred between war and peace, government and private sector, soldier and civilian, foreign and domestic. In such a context, intelligence is the first line of defense. Our nation relies on the indications and warning the U.S. intelligence community, commonly referred to as the IC, provides, which ensures that we can see first, know first, and hopefully act first. The National Security Agency is one of 18 members of the intelligence community, the largest and I would argue among the most important. When I'm asked, what does the NSA do? My ready response is, the NSA does two things better than anyone in the world. We make code and we break code. The latter supports foreign signals intelligence, SIGINT, the ability to discern what their adversaries are doing by breaking their encryption and reading their secrets. This protects our armed forces, our diplomats serving abroad, our critical infrastructure, and by extension, the American people. The agency is also charged with protecting our national security systems, the making code portion of the agency's two comparative advantages. NSA's cybersecurity mission is critical to ensuring the authenticity of our most sensitive communications and the availability of our most lethal weapon systems. However, in pursuit of the agency's signals intelligence and cybersecurity missions, the individuals who make up NSA's civilian and military workforce are guided by a powerful principle. They are not only defenders of the Constitution, but also bound by it. The NSA operates within a rigorous legal architecture, one that reflects our national commitments to both liberty and security. The authority for their activities comes from laws enacted by Congress and is subject to judicial interpretation and executive guidance. Key authorities include the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, which governs the collection of intelligence on foreign powers and agents under the oversight of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Executive Order 12333, which outlines the roles and responsibilities of U.S. intelligence agencies, particularly in overseas operations. And Title 10 and Title 50 of the U.S. Code, which delineate military and intelligence powers respectively. Importantly, the NSA has no law enforcement authority. Its signals intelligence mission operates outside the United States, and it's not authorized to surveil Americans. The agency does not make arrests, conduct criminal investigations, or prosecute individuals. Their job is to collect and analyze foreign signals intelligence and protect U.S. information systems. NSA's success in achieving these missions provides U.S. policymakers and military commanders a decided advantage in competition, crisis, or conflict. Let me start with a fundamental point. Protecting national security and protecting civil liberties are not mutually exclusive goals. NSA must do both at the same time. In fact, the NSA has often said it's an and, not an or mission that connects security and privacy. Neither is compromised for the other. I firmly believe that we can keep our country safe and uphold the values and freedoms that make our country unique. That conviction isn't just a slogan. It's rooted in the oath of office. Every NSA employee swears an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. They don't swear an oath to an agency or to secrecy or to any single mission. They swear it to the Constitution, which enshrines Americans' rights. So the men and women of NSA understand that while they have a critical foreign intelligence mission, they're equally bound to protect the freedom, civil liberties, and privacy rights of Americans. In other words, the rule of law and the rights of our fellow citizens are always in the forefront of what NSA does. Admittedly, tensions can arise between these goals. We've all heard variations of the classic, how much privacy are you willing to give up for how much privacy are you willing to give up for security? Or, if you have security, do you need liberty? I reject the premise that it's a zero-sum trade-off. The challenge is finding the right balance, ensuring we have the tools to stop threats while maintaining strong safeguards so those tools aren't misused or overused. A good example of the right balance is technology that allows us more focused collection on foreign threats, at the same time retention policies that reinforce a limited time for storing collected communications. Both of these and others like that support the idea of maintaining balance. The founders of our nation understood this balance. They sought to provide for the common defense and to secure the blessings of liberty. Generations of intelligence professionals and civil libertarians have debated it. And as technology has advanced, the debate has only grown more complex. But I'd argue that with robust oversight, transparency, and a culture of compliance, we can honor and achieve both imperatives. From my perspective as the former NSA director and as a career military intelligence officer, security and liberty actually reinforce each other more often than people realize. If the public loses confidence that its rights are not being respected, that erodes trust in national security programs and ultimately makes it harder for the agency to do their job. Conversely, when people see that we can protect them while respecting the law, it builds a strong trust, which makes it easier to enlist public support and even recruit the talent that is needed. So balancing these is not just an abstract ideal. It's a practical necessity for effective national security. Within the NSA, they have built a culture that emphasizes compliance and responsibility. Every analyst receives extensive training in U.S. law, civil liberties, and minimization procedures, the rules by which we protect U.S. person information that may be incidentally collected during foreign intelligence operations. They employ technical safeguards such as access controls and audit logs to monitor every interaction with data. Policy safeguards, including requirements to justify queries and document each step. Minimization standards, which govern how long data can be retained, who can view it, and under what conditions. NSA's Civil Liberties, Privacy, and Transparency Office plays a vital role in evaluating how policies affect privacy and ensuring they comply with legal obligations. Furthermore, independent inspector generals have unfettered access to NSA operations routinely and their procedures. Trust must be earned and certainly re-earned. Let me now turn to the question of how NSA is held accountable. The answer is clear. NSA is one of the most heavily overseen entities in the federal government. There are 4 key pillars of oversight. First of all is executive branch oversight. The President's Intelligence Advisory Board, the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence all provide executive level scrutiny. Additionally, the Department of Justice must approve all foreign intelligence surveillance applications, and NSA's own legal counsel evaluates every intelligence operation before it's executed. Secondly, is congressional oversight. The NSA is subject to continuous oversight by the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. They provide regular briefings, submit reports, and testify under oath. This is not just a formality, it's a vital democratic check on NSA's authority. The third piece is judicial oversight. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court is an Article III court with the authority to approve, reject, and supervise NSA's foreign intelligence activities conducted under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court opinions, especially those with novel legal reasonings, are increasingly being declassified and released to the public. And finally, public accountability. In recent years, the U.S. intelligence community has taken meaningful steps to be more transparent. They've published annual transparency reports, declassified key documents, and launched multiple transparency websites. This was an important step to highlight what the agency was doing to ensure the safeguards of what they were doing were communicated broadly. What it lacked, however, was transparency in what the agency did to secure America and enhance our national security. Again, the right balance of security and civil liberties and transparency requires an understanding by the American people of both sides of this equation. Accountability is not an obstacle, it is an anchor. The NSA has not been immune to controversy. The unauthorized disclosures by Edward Snowden in 2013 revealed several classified NSA surveillance programs, including some that raised serious privacy concerns in the public's mind. Perhaps the most debated was the NSA's bulk collection of Americans' phone records under Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, often referred to as the Telephone Metadata Program. Another was PRISM, an effort under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act involving cooperation with internet companies to collect foreign intelligence from online communications. The programs had been authorized by law and overseen by the courts and Congress, but to most Americans, they were completely invisible until they were thrust into the spotlight. The result was a number of reforms that significantly reshaped NSA's policies, including the ending of bulk telephony metadata collection under the USA Freedom Act of 2015, new internal structures, including NSA's Civil Liberties and Privacy Office, to assess privacy risks, before programs are launched. Greater public engagement, including classified briefings to civil liberties organizations under the auspices of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board. Even more important, I would suggest, is NSA's move to greater transparency. Following the Snowden disclosures, the agency did not wall itself off. Rather, they became more public. Initially, the NSA focused on describing the civil liberties, privacy protections, and oversight that were instituted. Think of this as the way or the how NSA did its work. This was a necessary first step, but it wasn't sufficient to engender the complete trust and confidence of the American people. What it lacked was an appreciation for the what and the why. I believe this complete picture of both the security we achieved with the protections to civil liberties and privacy that is being provided ensures a greater confidence in the agency. Importantly, this desire to share more information was fostered by my experiences during my nomination hearings in March of 2018. The Constitution provides the President with the authority to nominate senior officials for select positions. The check and balance in this is the Senate's constitutional authority to approve or reject those nominations. I would characterize a nomination hearing as an out-of-body experience, particularly if it's your first one. I recall entering the Senate chamber and hearing hundreds of cameras clicking my picture, the light shining in my eyes, and the voice of the Senate chairman announcing, "The witness may be seated." It was at this moment that I knew my life had changed. In the aftermath of the Russian attempt to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, the Senate members were anxious to hear how I would lead NSA and U.S. Cyber Command to prevent these type of actions occurring in the future. Senators noted that the American people needed greater confidence that their government was doing all it could to protect our democratic processes. Given this initial experience at my nomination hearings, I was determined to share as much information as possible to ensure Americans had trust and confidence in what we did, why we did it, and how we did it. My focus was on leading the agency and the command to achieve greater success while also looking at ways to highlight the work and the benefit to our citizens. 3 examples come to mind. In 2018, in response to the Russian attempts to influence the 2016 elections, NSA and Cyber Command established a Russia small group. It was small in name only. About 500 people were with the Russia small group. This elite task force of our best operators and analysts focused on supporting the whole of government effort for a safe and secure election. Operating outside the United States, the Russia small group was able to identify Russian proxy actors, take down their computer infrastructure, and also provide indications and warnings of foreign intelligence operations to the FBI and Department of Homeland Security. It was successful in not only stopping the Russians, but setting a standard of delivering safe and secure elections going forward. Given the criticality of cybersecurity, my second example is when I established a new directorate to work on these issues early in my tenure. NSA analysts late in 2019 discovered a serious vulnerability in Windows 10. A vulnerability, if discovered by adversarial nations, criminals, or hackers, could put hundreds of millions of computers at risk. We shared this information with Microsoft to ensure a patch would be distributed rapidly. But perhaps more significantly here is the question I asked of leaders after we shared this information with Microsoft. Can NSA take credit for not only finding the vulnerability, but also sharing that information? The room was silent, like it is right now. When I asked the leaders of that, what they told me was that we had never done that before, that what we would be doing would be precedent setting. Well, in my mind, let's set some precedent. Let's make sure that the American people know that their agency that is doing national security work is first and foremost securing the nation and its people. The last example is more recent. In the run-up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, NSA, along with other intelligence community members, released portions of our most sensitive intelligence on not only what Russia was planning to do, but how they would weave disinformation to justify their actions. After much discussion, and admittedly some concern on doing this, NSA was able to release very sensitive information on what was going to occur, while also protecting how we obtain this information. Importantly, the information turned out to be completely accurate, allowing the US to build a coalition in support of Ukraine, disrupt the Russian disinformation campaign, and support Ukraine. I believe this is an example of ensuring security, safeguarding liberties, and enhancing the trust and confidence of the American people. I come back to this point on public trust. Among the most significant lessons I learned leading NSA was the importance of the American people maintaining trust and confidence in the NSA and its leaders. Absent this trust and confidence, NSA's missions will fail. Conversely, with public trust, there's almost no limit on what we can do. Public trust leads to talented young people joining our ranks. It empowers the partnerships with industry and academia and serves as the foundation for the support of our political leaders. Engendering this public trust relies on NSA's leadership to understand that as technologies change, as the tradecraft in response to collecting the right information changes, a balanced discussion of what the agency does and why the agency does it, the two elements of ensuring our national security must also be complemented on the how the agency does it, the essential piece of protecting civil liberties and privacy. Public trust is never given and must be earned through being forthright and engaged with the public, through oversight and through appropriate transparency that allows a greater understanding of what, why, and how NSA does its work. So as I close today, let me return to the central question. How do we strike the right balance between security and civil liberties? The answer is not a static formula. It's a dynamic practice. It requires constant vigilance, open dialogue, and public trust. It demands that we be prepared to act decisively in defense of the nation, while equally committed to acting lawfully, proportionately, and ethically. National security is not the enemy of privacy, nor is privacy the enemy of security. They are partners in a democratic system that places the individual at its center. At the NSA, they understand that surveillance power, no matter how well-intentioned, must always be constrained by law, bounded by oversight, and grounded in respect for our people. As I conclude, I want to directly address the students and young people here. You are the next generation of leaders, engineers, civil liberties lawyers, policymakers, maybe even future NSA employees. The question we've discussed, security versus privacy, technology versus ethics, will be yours to grapple with soon enough. I encourage you to engage, to debate, to question, hold our government accountable. That's your right and responsibility in a democracy. And consider being part of the solution. We need bright minds who understand technology and values to help institutions like NSA continue to evolve. One day, I hope to be seated next to Catherine, and hope one of you will be standing here at this podium, perhaps having served in my former role or another like it, explaining the new balance you'll strike in your era. If you do, I trust you'll remember that our strength as a nation lies in our ability to safeguard our security and our freedoms simultaneously. Thank you for listening so attentively. It's been a pleasure to share these thoughts with you. I'm confident that with informed citizens and dedicated public servants working together, we will keep America safe while staying true to our liberties. That balance, challenging as it may be, is what makes our nation the beacon of hope and freedom that it is. I look forward to your questions and continuing this important conversation. Thank you very much.
General Nakasone, thank you so much for your comments. Prior to this event, we solicited questions from students and faculty, and I have some of them here, so I want to go through some of these questions and we'll hear the General's response. First, General, you spoke of greater challenges in the world during your time at NSA. Can you describe?
That's my wife laughing. She lived through it.
Oh, sorry. Well, you spoke of greater challenges in the world during your time at NSA. Can you describe how you viewed the geopolitical situation? Did it change much during your tenure?
Tremendously. And let me just begin with the story, because I think the story kind of captures the rapidity of change. When I took over the National Security Agency in May of 2018, I established 10 wake-up criteria. And I told my 24/7 watch, if any one of these 10 criteria, pop during your time on duty, call me. I don't care where I am in the world. I don't care what I'm doing. You call me. Why did I do that? Well, I'm a self-preservationist, and I always wanted to know the information before my boss, the Secretary of Defense, or the President knew that, because as soon as this happens, within 10 or 15 minutes, you're getting a call from the Secretary of Defense or the National Security Advisor. So I was, looking out my own interests at heart. The first year, 2018, I was called 3 times. In 1 year, 3 times. The last full month on the job, January 2024, I was called 11 times. It got to the point my wife, who answers the phone in our house, would say 3 things. It's for you. It's them. Good luck. That's the indicator of the rapidity of change in terms of what's happening in the world. Now, to your broader question of how do I view the world, when I left the agency, really I saw 3 different arcs in terms of what's happening geopolitically. First of all is the rise of China. No doubt. 1972, Nixon goes to Beijing. The gross domestic product of China in 1972, 114 billion. That's with a B. $billion. 50 years later, 2022, China's gross domestic product, $17 trillion. That's with a T. Just to give you a perspective, in 2022, the US gross domestic product is about $24 trillion. So a tremendous growth in terms of China's economy. But it's not just their economy, it's their diplomatic prowess, their information capabilities, and their military. Second arc is 2 ongoing conflicts. One, Russia-Ukraine, one in the Middle East. That is really changing the character of warfare. Let me give you an example. On the 24th of February 2022, when Russia invades Ukraine, there are 0 ships in the Ukrainian Navy. Today, on the 15th of April 2025, there are 0 ships in the Ukrainian Navy. Yet they have sunk over half of the Russian Black Sea fleet at a cost of $500 million. This is the changing character of warfare. This is what we're seeing from drones. This is what we're seeing from simple connections to Starlink down to a semi-submersible platform. That is really remaking how conflict is going to be prosecuted now and into the future. And the last arc I would share is a series of borderless challenges. Borderless challenges. Cybersecurity, global pandemics, climate change, election interference. These are the type of activities that you're dealing with as a national security leader today. So when I came into the Army at the end of the Cold War, we were worried about war or peace. That's how we looked at the war. That's how we looked at the world in the year that I came in, and really for the next 10 years. What we look at the world today is a rheostat of somewhere between competition, crisis, and conflict. And you can be in one of those 3 spectrums at any time during the year that you're really kind of looking at. So that's kind of the fluidity of change.
Okay, thank you. General, I note that when you retired, you headed to academia. I find that an interesting transition. Why did you do this? And what are you doing now at Vanderbilt? And what insights have you garnered in your new role?
Well, first of all, I knew when I left the Army that I wanted to give back in some way. And one of the things I wanted to do was just provide kind of a context for my experiences over 37 years. So academia was a really good fit for it. In terms of this Institute of National Security that Vanderbilt University stood up last fall, we are looking really at three different markers. First of all, there's this idea that the world has changed completely in terms of national security. I just talked about it in terms of China, in terms of two ongoing conflicts and borderless challenges. Here's a second piece, that there is a huge demographic change that's ongoing right now in the national security community. Let me offer a story. Every single quarter, as the National Security Agency Director, I would travel to the West Coast or Austin or Boston to see the latest technology. Inevitably, when I would go into the room to talk to these young companies, they were probably half my age. Yet when I came back to Washington, D.C., I was one of the younger people at the table with the senior leaders of our government. And so I have this belief that, if we are going to continue to be a world power, we need to have the next generation of young people that are going to be national security professionals. And it's not just the demographic change in terms of age, it's also what I talked about in the speech, right? It's Python, right? It's no longer a snake, right? You need to have Python. You need to be able to understand big data. You need to be able to understand machine learning. You need to be able to understand artificial intelligence. And so this idea is kind of captured in a meme that I use at Vanderbilt. We want leaders who can code and coders who can lead. That's a type of national security professional we're trying to develop at Vanderbilt, and that's one of the things that we are really charging hard on. And the last piece is, I have a really firm belief that some of our most pressing issues need pragmatic solutions. Okay, pragmatic solutions that you can take a look at and say, wow, if we were just able to develop some type of way to crowdsource a problem, wow, wouldn't that be really novel and really effective? That's what we're doing at Vanderbilt with the Wicked Problems Lab. And so, again, it is exciting. I would tell you the one thing that I come back to is I am thrilled to be in the classroom again with 18 to 22-year-olds, right? And just the energy that they bring today, and the ability to talk to the MPA folks here at SPIA. I was thrilled to talk to so many that told me about their experiences today, but more importantly, how they saw about being able to make a difference in the state and local level, or perhaps one day being able to go after their PhD. That to me is just energizing. So that's kind of my early experiences. I'm pretty excited about it.
That's great. General, you mentioned in your speech the changes at NSA. What can you say about them, and how impactful will they be on the agency?
Yeah, I think clearly the elephant in the room here is that 2 weeks ago the president dismissed both the director and the deputy director of the National Security Agency. I'd begin with the president has every right to have the team that he wants, and he gets to make the decisions at the end of the day. You understand that when you are in positions of senior leadership within the government. Both in the Trump administration and the Biden administration, I clearly understood that. I would also say that I know General Tim Hawk, I know Wendy Noble, the deputy director, extremely well. I worked with them for over a decade. They are, two of the best professionals I have ever worked with in my career. They have incredible experiences, and I'm sorry to see that the change was made. But with that being said, while there will be challenges, I'm sure, in this period of, leader transition, I'm confident that the agency and the command will continue to persevere.
Okay. Well, given the current assault on federal government structures and processes and funding, please articulate concerns you have about personal privacy protections that Americans expect given our Constitution.
One of the things that you may find surprising, even the former director of the National Security Agency believes really strongly in oversight, believes really strongly that we always have to challenge what our government is saying in terms of even their surveillance powers. And so that's something that's inherently important for us as citizens to do. And I would encourage all of you to do that, to always to question, but also to understand, as I mentioned in my talk, that there is a very, very important balance we have to achieve, right? We have to maintain the common defense, right? At the same time, the blessings of liberty. And so that's the equation that you've got to balance. And I think the way that has to be done is it has to be done through a degree of oversight, a degree of transparency, and really a degree of public trust. And the public trust needs to come from us being discerning citizens. And that's one of the things that I certainly will be as a private citizen. Here's
a question from one of our students. As a senior graduating in May, looking for jobs in the intelligence community during this administration, with a lack of jobs right now, how would you suggest we go about finding a good entry-level position?
So I would apply everywhere. First, I begin with that, right? I think that you never know where your application is going to lead you to. I also would tell you that you probably in your minds have exactly the formula, like what the next 4 years is going to look like. Let me tell you from someone that had the same thought leaving college, that you are completely wrong, okay? That there are going to be opportunities that are going to present yourself that you have no idea are coming. There are going to be changes in your life that are going to occur that you have absolutely no idea coming. There are going to be challenges in your life that you're going to have to also address. So with that being said, what I would just encourage you to do is, first of all, have a longer view than perhaps the next 2 or 4 years. Have this idea that, I'm going to apply to a number of different positions, and any of those that may accept me might be a really good opportunity for me to learn. And the third thing to do is also understand that what you do for the rest of your life really impacts your own mental outlook on who you are and what you're going to do. For someone that every single day enjoyed what I was doing, it really didn't matter where I was stationed or the money I was making. It was the fact that I could go work with interesting people doing something I truly believed in. That's what's so intriguing about the University of Georgia. The work that you do here, training young people for this idea of service, you will never regret that period of service. For folks that I have met that have served 2 years or 4 years or 40 years, they look back on it saying, wow, that was an amazing experience for me. And so I just commend that to you as you think about this time from the next 2 and 4 years. Let me assure you, it's much broader than that, and things are going to change.
As President Trump has fired and or replaced inspector generals across the federal government, what are the prospects for objective oversight and accountability of government work going forward? What can those inside and outside of government do to bolster the accountability of government agencies?
Dr. Kelly, you would have been great on a Senate panel. Okay, so let me begin with just my insights with regards to inspectors general, because a number have served with me and helped me during my time in a number of different positions. I think the IG role is critical. I think that IGs that are appointed, that are there, not only oversee what is being done in the government, but also at times can be of great assistance to you. There were a number of times when I would ask the IG of NSA, would you please take a look at this as a third party to actually say, hey, is this occurring? Is this happening? Most folks don't see that. They say, oh, the IG is going to check my work. Well, they're going to check your work, but they also can be a huge help to your work. And so I am concerned about the firing of the inspectors general and those that have not been replaced. I think, again, this is part of the work that private citizens need to do to communicate that to their congressional members, that this is an important aspect of what goes on. But I think the other thing that you should keep in mind is that there are other avenues upon which oversight is done. So whether or not it's done by the legislative branch in Congress, or whether or not it's done in the judicial branch, or whether or not it's through public citizens that are actually speaking up about it, that's another way that oversight has to be done. So if one of those ways isn't working, I commend you to look at a different way and try to bring that to fruition.
Okay. What are things the general public can do to assist in combating cyber attacks?
Chris will vouch for me. This morning when I talked with the students, I talked about the fact that the most disruptive technology that I saw in my lifetime was the advent of the iPhone in 2007. So for those of you that were young in 2007, I would tell you that I was one of the folks that listened to Steve Jobs at Macworld and said, reinvent a cell phone? What are you talking about? I got a BlackBerry. What do I want a cell phone for? But here's what I would tell you. Think how the cell phone has changed our way of life. How we communicate, how we order products, how we pay bills, how we bank, how we have one device that really does it all for us. Anyone grab a flashlight lately? Anyone develop wet film lately? Right. Okay, so this is the power of this one device. To your question, what should you do as a vigilant citizen on cybersecurity? I would begin with your cell phone. think about the data that's stored on your cell phone. First thing I would do is make sure your operating system, your iOS, when you get those messages, update your iOS, do it immediately. That's the number one way that hackers get into your phone and steal your data. The second is ensuring that you have very strong passwords. So coming from someone that was responsible for developing the algorithms for the nation, for its security, let me assure you that my password is not password 1234. Nor should yours be. And think about the fact that as many apps as you have, as many accounts as you have, you better have a password manager. You have to have some way to be able to manage your security online. And while you'll say, hey, they might get hacked, okay, they might get hacked, I'll take that chance, but I'd rather have it than writing on 15 different pieces of paper. My password one, I can never find that piece of paper when I need it. And the next thing I would tell you is every single morning, start by turning your cell phone off and then turning it on. Recycle it. This is one of the things that we recommended at the National Security Agency to prevent hackers from having a permanent presence with malware on your phone. So if you do all of those things, and you continue to be very, very skeptical of links that are sent to you from the Nigerian prince, I would tell you that you may not be the fastest gazelle in the forest, but you won't be the slowest one. And I think that's a critical piece of being able to ensure your own security in cyberspace.
Okay. How might lessons learned from the past inform strategy and decision-making today, given an administration that does not operate under or even close to norms of the past?
So I think one of the things, let's come back to this talk of speed and how speed is really influencing the way that even our government is running today. I talked about wake-up criteria. Let me talk about executive orders. In the first 45 days of the new administration, there were 109 executive orders released. In a normal four-year presidency, the average is about 216. In a normal 8-year presidency, it's about 315. Okay, just because there's been 108 executive orders released now, doesn't mean there's going to be another 108 released in the next 30 days. There could well be. But I think that this is the piece of what we've got to think about in terms of speed. This is what's going to occur in the future, whether or not it's a Republican or a Democratic administration. You're going to see the use of executive orders as really the preferred way of governing for quite some time. So I would say, as students of history, we need to think about, when have there been other dramatic changes in our government, and what has been done to ensure, the importance of the three different, branches of our government. So what is it that Congress needs to think about? What is it that the Supreme Court and the judiciary needs to think about? Let's take a look at the lessons that we've learned from before. I think there have been some. But I would also say that, my sense is that over time this is going to probably stabilize in terms of the way it's going. But I think the pace in which we're seeing now, don't be surprised if you see that for the rest of your lifetime.
Okay. I don't know if I'm ready.
Might be a new book.
Might be. Let's see. What are the national security implications of the fact that high-ranking officials in Trump's administration are using Signal and other non-official communication channels for sensitive and confidential government discussions?
So I'm not familiar at all with using a commercial application to discuss sensitive information. And so this was a surprise to me. Hopefully that this has been a lesson well learned. And I would tell you that one of the challenges of operating the world in which we operate today is that we have sometimes a degree of trust in things that are said to be secure. I would tell you, as the former director of the National Security Agency, end-to-end encryption is more secure, but it is not impenetrable. And so my concern, obviously, is utilizing a commercial application for the transmit of this type of data. And I think that, just my experience, and certainly my wife would back me up here, is we had a comms team all the time that travels with us, and we had an opportunity to be able to utilize secure communications. I think that's a lesson learned here. I mean, let's make sure that we professionalize the way that we're approached to national security, and I think this is certainly one way that has to improve.
Okay. How can the U.S. effectively combat Russian-created propaganda and misinformation that is being circulated widely on social media?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. In 2018, as I mentioned when I came out of my nomination hearing, I was pretty convinced that either we were going to have a safe and secure election in the fall of 2018 and we're going to be able to take care of the Russian misinformation, or there'd be a new director of NSA and a new commander of U.S. Cyber Command. And so it was top on my list to make sure that we had success against the Russians and the Russian proxies. Here's how you do it. You go after the information, not only the purveyors of that information, where they're storing that information, but exposing that information early. So when we found Russian infrastructure outside the United States, Cyber Command went and took it down. When we found messaging outside the United States, we went after it with Cyber Command. When we learned the proxy agents that were actually generating these information operations attacks, we sent them messages saying, hey, if you ever want to leave the Soviet Union, I'm sorry, Russia, whoops. If you ever want to leave Russia, you need to stop because we know who you are. That's a really effective technique. It's like, when you find mold, put light on it because that will cure it. And this is the same feeling I have. When you find disinformation operations, shine a light on it and make it public. This is what we did in the fall of 2021 when we said this is exactly the way the Russians are going to justify their actions in Ukraine. And it was all true. And I think that's an important piece of our intelligence community, again, doing the what and the why of Americans to feel confident in their national security and the way that it's being done.
Okay. I think we have one more here. General, what are the key qualities you believe are necessary for leaders to possess to succeed in today's rapidly changing world?
Okay, Bo, let me just say this one if you don't mind, because I used it again this morning. The story. When I was an undergraduate, I spent an incredible amount of time thinking about what I needed to major in and what I needed to minor in. And should I have a double major and a double minor or one major and two minors? And then I graduated, and not a single person asked me what I majored in. It was amazing. But here's what they were really concerned about. Could you think critically? Could you communicate? And did you have character? So those 3 C's, critical thinking, communications, and character, were the 3 pieces that I think provided me at least an advantage during my time in the Army and my time as a senior leader in the government. I offer that to all of you. As a critical thinker, can you define the problem, determine the facts and assumptions, bring a series of different and unique ideas, test those ideas, choose an idea, then measure that idea? If you can, you're an accomplished critical thinker. And there will be a place in the private or the public sector or anywhere you want to go work. If you're a communicator, if you like to write with a subject, verb, and direct object, I love you. A certain amount of conciseness and a certain amount of brevity and a certain amount of ability to communicate an idea in writing is a gift. And then at the same time, to be able to motivate people through the way that you talk, to be able to say, hey, this is what our goal is. Hey, this is the challenges that we face. This is the pathway ahead. This is all tied to your oral communications. And then at the end of it, your character. People will see your character. I remember my parents always said, character is what you are in the dark. Oh my gosh, that is so true. That's what you are in the dark. And people will see that immediately. So again, my advice to all of you as you think about it, think about being a great critical thinker, think about being an expert communicator, and think about being a person of character. That's what I would offer.
Well, thank you, General Nakasone, for your remarks and to our audience for submitting such thoughtful questions. I'd like to invite you all to a reception just a short walk away in the Founders Memorial Garden. There are directional signs to assist you in finding your way. Thank you again for coming today, and I hope to see you all at the reception.
Thanks.